So, there you go.
I have a comment first. You mentioned the Senate race against Kay Hagan, and there is a guy that's come out, Dr. Greg Brandon. He's a Tea Party guy, Liberty guy, OBGYN. He can fundraise. I've met him, I've heard him speak. He's going to be speaking at an event next weekend on the 26th at the Warehouse in Winterville, an event called Liberty Rally. It's a coming together of the RLC and Eastern Carolina Tea Party, which is great because that's building coalitions, which is what we need to do. My question is, since I wanted to make that comment to let everyone know that there is a guy, Dr. Greg Brandon. He's got an organization called founderstruth.org. Check him out. And I'm going to go ahead and ask a question since I'm up here. You know, you can look at Ron Paul and the other guy that ran for president on a libertarian ticket. You have all these people, what you would call the libertarian wing. Some of them are in the party still, some of them have left, some of them have left to come back, like Dr. Mike Beitler, who ran for Secretary of State. How will you treat and what will you do with these libertarian type thinking people in and out of the party to connect them to the party, to the conservative movement?
Reach out and invite them. Correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Dr. Brandon going to be down in Charlotte next Thursday and Friday for the RNC as well? Open?
I'm not sure. I know he's our main speaker at the Liberty.
Okay, because yeah, check out his website. A lot of interesting things out there. As far as including the Libertarian Party within the Republican Party, be out there and without a doubt. I mean, I was in Florida, and I'll just tell you right here, right now. I mean, I think you guys would have lost a count, but I think you deserve the respect to have had a count. They were calling division in Florida. They were, they were applying Robert's Rules of Order as they understood them, and I think as anybody that read them would understand them. And unfortunately, John Boehner did a better job of running the convention than Mayor, Villalobos did on the Democratic Party, where he blew the God in Jerusalem vote 3 times. But definitely include them and solicit their opinion and go from there. I mean, the same thing I would do for anybody else, to be honest.
Well, I go back to what I said earlier about working together doesn't mean you have to get cozy with one another. One of the things that I would be a staunch advocate for is the adopted platform of the Republican Party and the values contained in it. And I hear so often from the people in the Liberty Caucus, we've got to stand firm. Don't compromise your values for anything. You're voting for the lesser of 2 evils, all this. Well, folks, that's exactly what I do. I stand firm for what I believe in. It's that platform. If I can find a way to work with people who agree with me on X, Y, and Z, then fine, we work on X, Y, and Z. And if we disagree on A, B, and C, we put it over here and we don't talk about it because it just gets in the way. But the future of the Republican Party in North Carolina is not becoming the Libertarian Light Party. Those who are suggesting that the party should move to the center and compromise its values for the sake of gaining more votes and having a majority are taking the party in the wrong direction. If I am right, and I believe I am right as a party of one, first and foremost. And I will not betray my personal convictions for the sake of political expediency, period.
Never relinquish the mic.
I actually have a question. As chairman of the GOP, looking back, especially this past election, there's been a lot of voter fraud this last election, especially in other states and stuff. If that was to become a problem here in North Carolina, how would you go about dealing with that issue as chairman of the GOP? I know there's very little that you could do, but what would you do?
Again, one of the things that you can do, even when you don't have the personal power to intervene, is to call attention to things. And as I pointed out previously, come June, all the county boards of elections will now have a Republican majority, not a Democratic majority. There were anecdotal stories I know all across the state. Nobody ever definitively captured the specific violations, the informations. I don't know that anybody took them to the DAs and said, hey, can we prosecute on this? Shifting that balance of power certainly increases our options. And they should be encouraged not only, that's when the Board of Election needs to get it from both sides. The people from the bottom up and from the top down. Because if it's wrong, it's wrong. It's not only wrong because it's here and not up here, or vice versa. And things don't become more right the higher up they go in that power chain.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, there was actually a case of voter fraud where we actually had the specific name of somebody who voted in the primary who had died a couple months earlier. I believe it was in Guilford County. Can't remember. But if that happens under a Republican-led state, we're in deep, deep, deep trouble. But if it happens and I'm chair, I'm going to bring that up. And if it's a Republican that's committing voter fraud, I'm going to bring it up. One of the issues, you won't be surprised, that I found myself facing in the 12th district is voter ID. And a lot of the Democrats, you know, and they were talking about the whole situation, and, you know, the standard reply, if you want to call it that, for a conservative or for a Republican is, you know, the governor required 2 forms of ID to get in to one of her events in the Capitol. You need a form of ID to cash a check. You need a form of ID to board a plane. And, you know, the response from the liberals is always, yeah, but those aren't guaranteed in the Constitution. And my response is, yes, that's why voting is more important and needs to be treated with the respect that it deserves, and that's why we need voter ID. And going back to the conversation and that Bill had, and that is, you know, if you can put them on edge, and frequently when you're talking to them, you know, you're not trying to convince the person you're talking to, you're trying to convince the people that are listening in on the conversation. And that's the thing about voter ID is we need to move forward with that, and as chairman I would bring it up no matter who does it.
Okay, before I turn this back over to Robert, there's one thing I would like to do. I'd like to acknowledge the veterans that are in the room today. If you're a veteran or active, please stand up. I agree. Robert said we should stand for you. EMT, firefighters, and police officers. Thank you. With all due respect,
Yes.
I hope I never see you out there.
Jim, we got to do one more thing. Closing statements. Because Jack went first, you go first this time, and Jack will finish.
Again, one of the reasons I said I'm not campaigning to be state chair is that decision is not mine to make. It's yours. I would hope that if enough people show up, that someone is willing to place my name in the nomination, that we get a second, that there would be enough people there to carry the day. I don't think Jack or I, either one of us, wants to be nominated by a group that can only put 25 votes on the floor. Understand the numbers. Out of the number of delegates at that convention, it's going to take roughly 700, that's just a ballpark number, of delegates to get somebody elected as chair or vice chair. I have no personal preference. I sat down with Chairman Hayes last week. I had a very candid conversation with him. I've had lunch with Dr. Ada Fisher. I've talked with her too. She says my resume is impressive, but it's not compelling. So invite me to lunch. So I did, and I spent about 2 hours with the lady. her advice to me was to run for vice chair. Pay my dues for 2 years and then be in a position to be state chair when the party needs me. That's 2016, the next presidential election cycle. There's a lot of wisdom in that. So I'm not tying my horse to any one particular wagon at this point. Frankly, I do think it's all going to come down to the moment on the floor of the convention when the nominations are made. You can do much more between now and June to affect whether or not I or Jack become the state chair or vice chair than either of us can. Because that's where the real work gets done, is at the grassroots level. This is the chance for the grassroots to prove how organized and unified they can become. Because quite frankly, if you aren't organized and unified, we're going to continue to be seen as a bunch of ragtag misfits who can't get our act together. What credibility is that going to have with the GOP or any other organization? The mission is out there for us. We can stand up and lead. But that's about the extent of it. We can provide the leadership. We can get out there in the trenches and get muddy with you, but we can't do it all ourselves. So the question now is for you to take a hard look, do some serious soul searching about what direction you think the party needs to go in and which one of these candidates can best be the one to move that party forward. If it's me, I'm grateful and I appreciate your support. But I'm going to respect the opinion of the majority. And if it turns out to be Jack or somebody else, I'm right in there with you. Thank you.
You've heard a lot of good things here, and the same thing I would tell you, here would be for an election. Do your homework. You've heard from Major Dave. You know that I'm interested. You also know that Wayne King's interested, as is Robin Hayes. Investigate your candidates. Find out what they stand for. Find out what they've done in the past. Continue the conversation. I think both Dave and I are online. Dave and I are online. You can continue the conversation, ask the questions, and go from there. If you have more candidates, talk to them as well. But one thing that really rings true today is, those that show up. You have to show up in order to influence, and in order to win, you have to influence. So get out there and talk to some of your friends and get them next time that you see an event, Tea Party event, whether it's Dr. Bannon's event coming up or whatever it may be, the events down in Charlotte for the RNC. Bring a friend. Make sure you don't have an empty seat in your car. And I thank you for coming out today.